Welcome back to The Bridges Between Us, a podcast from CaringBridge sharing real stories from real people navigating health journeys. Stories about caregiving, connection, uncertainty, and the many ways support shows up when life changes unexpectedly. My name is Andy Tiemann. Rachel was a litigator. Ferocious, loyal, deeply private, and absolutely determined not to let stage 4 metastatic colon cancer define her. When she got the call after a colonoscopy, Rachel knew exactly who to call first, her sister Sarah. In this episode of The Bridges Between Us, I'll be talking with CaringBridge board member Sarah Krevans as she shares the story of the 2.5-year journey she walked alongside her sister Rachel as her voice, her advocate, her fellow wig-try-on partner, and the person who wrote and then read every CaringBridge post aloud before hitting publish, because it was Rachel's story, not Sarah's. She tells that story best, and here it is.
I'm Sarah Krevans, and I've been a CaringBridge user for many, many years. I've authored several different pages for different relatives and also been a visitor, been a guest on the CaringBridge pages of friends, including currently following the friends' healthcare journey on CaringBridge.
I'm curious, what is, you mentioned multiple pages that you've authored. That's a lot. What is the one that we're here today to talk about?
So my sister, who was 14 months older than I was, we were 5 children, 4 of us in 5 years. Rachel and I were the girls. My parents used to say they couldn't decide what was better. Was it when we were fighting or when we were getting along? But we were very, very close. She called me early one morning, right after she'd had a colonoscopy, and told me they'd found a very large suspicious mass and they thought it was cancerous. Things developed pretty quickly from there. Turned out she had metastatic colon cancer. It was stage 4 by the time it was diagnosed. She had several spots in her liver. And immediately, actually, before even her first procedure, I started a CaringBridge page for her. I'd used CaringBridge before for my husband when he'd been in a pretty traumatic bicycle accident. And he recovered fully from that. And it was an incredibly wonderful way to communicate to friends and family without it being an incredible burden on me. We had 3 children, some of whom were rather young at the time. So I was familiar with CaringBridge and immediately thought this is going to be helpful. So I asked my sister if it was okay. My sister really liked to be in control. It was one of the things that was scariest to her about having cancer. And I explained to her how CaringBridge worked and that we could decide if her page was public or private. And in the end, actually, I started 2 pages for her. They were both password protected, but one page was for family and friends, and the other page was for her work colleagues who she was very close to, but she didn't want as much personal information on her work page because she intended to, and indeed did continue to work really almost up until the end of her life.
I'm so sorry. That is a lot to manage, and especially with a sibling. That's a lot. If you could, for our listeners, describe just at a high level obviously you were already a fan, you were already a user. It was probably relatively automatic for you to suggest it, to know, to realize the benefits. But why would someone consider a page like you did so quickly?
When I was first a CaringBridge user with my husband's accident, I really had never heard of it. And it was the case manager in the hospital who told me about it and said, this is going to save you so much time. That was back when literally I had a flip phone and, you were trying to string people's cell phone numbers together to text them. And I'd had a great experience with the CaringBridge site that I had set up for my husband. And so it was actually my first thought. And my sister was not a social media user. She did not have a Facebook account. She did not have, Instagram. But when I was able to describe to her the privacy features of CaringBridge and the control that she would have, she really was pretty much on board right away. And she liked the fact and I committed this to her, that I would read her my posts before I posted them so that I could be her voice, but it was still her. She was in control. And it was very easy to set up. I had a picture of her that I really liked that she agreed I could post. And we just posted a little bit of information and told people how they could help. And that was a great thing because it saved a million phone calls and text messages. But also, when something like this happens, people want to know how to help. I had to learn, though, a little bit over time because my sister had very loyal friends and she was living about an hour and a half away from me in a pretty small town. And so I would often go stay with her and commute back to my own job from there. And I can remember one time posting, I love being with my sister, but all she has is tea and I'm desperate for some good coffee. And, the next day, like 20 people show up with coffee. So you have to be careful. Or the time at Christmas, Rachel was one of the few people in the world on the other who actually likes fruitcake, but it has to be good fruitcake. So we wrote this very funny post about fruitcake. I don't even know how I got rid of all the fruitcake that showed.
How many did you get? How many do you think showed up?
But it was really great. Like if I was busy and she needed a ride to chemotherapy, or if she wasn't feeling up for visitors, or she needed maybe suggestions of something light to read, it was so easy to just put a request out there and see what came back. And the great thing is always with whatever came back were so many messages of love and support.
I love that, how you would write it and then you would review it with her. That I'm sure that was not all that's a very business thing to do, but that was not all business. How did that feel? How did those meetings go?
It was some parts of it were very hard. So my sister, she was a very determined person. If she loved you, she was incredibly loyal. She could be ferocious. She was a litigator. Her field was intellectual property litigation. I was with her when they described to her after they had done an MRI and a CT, and they described to her where the tumors were and that they weren't going to be able to operate. And she stopped them and she left. She said, "You can explain it to Sarah. I don't want to know my prognosis. You can talk to her about it. I'm going to fight this." So there was a period of time when I knew more than she did about the disease. And even the things she knew, some of them she didn't want to share. She didn't want people to know that they thought her tumors were not operable because she was hoping to be that 1 in a million where they shrink enough to be able to operate. So that was hard for me at times because I was only telling part of the story, but I always reminded myself it was Rachel's story. It wasn't my story. It was Rachel's story. And I got so much love and support back, in addition to what came back to Rachel through the CaringBridge site, that it helped keep me from feeling alone. The mission of CaringBridge is that no one should ever have to go through a healthcare journey alone. And I was really focused on Rachel not going through it alone. But I realized that CaringBridge was another way to keep me, my siblings, other people who loved Rachel from going through it alone too. Because being a caregiver can be very lonely. Even when you're surrounded by people, it can be very lonely. I made friends through Rachel's CaringBridge site that I still stay in touch with today, 8 years later.
I'm glad you brought up the caregiver aspect of this whole thing because yes, she was sick. She was the one going through it maybe the most, but you certainly were too. I mean, anyone who's attached or loves or is connected is feeling it in their own way.
It's true. And everybody's experience is pretty different. How Rachel chose to handle her cancer journey is different than some other friends that I've been privileged to be a part of the end of their lives. I have to say, with Rachel and with other friends that I've walked this same path with, there's not been one instance where having a CaringBridge page wasn't additive for them and for their families.
Tell me about the page, in a way ends up living a life of its own, and it probably still exists, I mean, do you ever go back? Do you ever write anymore? Like, how does that go?
I went back and reread it for quite some time. And I printed the pages out for my mom, who did not go online. My mom For most of Rachel's illness, she was in California and my mom was here in Maine. I'm actually sitting here today in the house that was formerly my sister's, and my siblings and I and one of my children bought the house to preserve it because she loved it. And it's now where we gather as a family. So I'm just sitting here feeling very surrounded by my sister as we speak. I did go back and reread the pages because they did have a life of their own. They chronicled the pain, but they also chronicled the joy. Rachel and I making it to one last Giants game. We went fantasy wedding dress shopping for my daughter, whose wedding was so far in the future that we knew Rachel wasn't going to be alive for the wedding. And so, yeah, there's a lot of tears on those pages, but there are a lot of really happy memories on those pages too.
What other things did you guys do? You mentioned a Giants game, and I mean that's cool that you documented that too.
We documented everything. Rachel wanted some things to be lighthearted, so I had a fairly flippant tone on a lot of them. One of her, I think her second round of chemotherapy ended on New Year's Eve, and my eldest daughter, who was in medical school at the time, took little rhinestones and decorated her chemo bag. The rest of us would have been too afraid, I think, to glue things onto it. But she decorated her chemo bag for New Year's Eve, and we posted pictures of that. And when Rachel lost her hair and she needed to get a wig, she didn't want to go wig shopping. So I made her a deal that every wig she tried on, I would try on. And so we posted just these hilarious pictures of the two of us in wigs on the CaringBridge page. So we did lots of things like that. I think in part, not just to lift our own spirits, but to lift the spirits of people who were kind enough to read this, regular basis and post words of encouragements and notes and letters.
I know wigs are a big deal, and it's one thing, I went through my own journey, lost my hair, but I was almost bald anyway, so it didn't really matter. But for women, I know it's different. Did she go with an aspirational do, or did she try to replicate her real hair?
It was not easy to replicate her real hair because, like me at the time, her hair was changing colors, partly brown, partly gray. And, the wigs don't come like that. So she went with kind of a younger look, but most of the time she didn't wear it. She wore it when she went to court, but most of the time she didn't wear it. Most of the time she just wore hats. But if you saw the pictures on her CaringBridge page, and one of them were wearing like metallic hair wigs that I guess were for people to wear to some Halloween event or costume event.
So she was working. She was in the courtroom.
She was in the courtroom. Yeah.
She must have been just a beast. I mean, how do you get through that?
She loved her work and she loved her colleagues. She did it. She continued to travel, mostly for work, but we took a couple bucket list trips together. We went to Hearst Castle, which she'd never been to, which is, the Hearst family's home in California that is now a museum. And I don't know why she'd never been. I'd been before. We went to see that. She took our niece to the opera, which was something she wanted to do. But the most amazing trip we did, and we chronicled this on CaringBridge, was my youngest daughter, who Rachel just adored. She adored all her nieces and nephews, but she spent a lot of time with my family when my kids were little. She never married. She had no children of her own. And so she was with us every Christmas, every Thanksgiving. And she and Leah were very, very close. And Leah had the same boyfriend since Leah was in the ninth grade. And Randall had asked our permission to propose. But we had a trip planned to England because my son was living and working in England at the time. So our family, my two daughters, my husband and myself, were flying to England for Christmas. And Randall wanted to surprise Leah and propose over there. So I used Miles and I was going to have him propose. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't tell his own parents. He didn't tell his sisters. He didn't trust anyone to keep the secret. And I asked him if I could tell Rachel. And I invited Rachel to come with us to England for Christmas. And I told her Randall was going to propose. That was just such a special trip. I mean, she was so ill when we went. She was so ill, but she got to be there and be part of the planning. She got to be there for the proposal. And then we captured it all in pictures. And so she lived for another almost 7 months. And, she looked at those pictures all the time. We've talked a lot about how Rachel wanted it to be sort of fun and lighthearted, didn't want people to know how ill she really was for quite a long time. And when we got to the end, towards the end of her life, she had a really difficult time deciding whether she wanted that last stage to be in California or in Maine. She had a lot of trouble with the fact that it was time to go into hospice, waited a long time to go into hospice. She was starting to deteriorate, not just physically, but cognitively, which was really hard for her just because of the buildup. When your liver stops working right, you stop filtering a lot of stuff out of your body. And I was very focused, as was my brother, who was amazing through all of this. My brother's an internist, and he flew out to California to help me get her back here to Maine. But that was a hard time. And that was when I started not reading Rachel the posts. When I knew her friends and the extended family, they needed to say goodbye. And they were trying to call her on the phone and she couldn't answer the phone, or they wanted to send mail. So that was when I said, if you want to talk to Rachel, here's what you need to do. If you want to send her something, send it to me here in Maine. Make it a short card, make it a picture. If you want to talk to her on the phone, text me and we'll find a time and we'll use my phone and I'll hold it up for her. And it was sad and it was petrifying, but boy, there was so much love out there. And when I posted after she died, just the messages I got, my siblings got, my mom got, it was priceless. And yes, I think lots of these people would have sent something, a nice card in the mail, and most of them did follow up with a nice card in the mail. But those immediate words, they really meant a lot to all of us.
I've followed along in all other pages, and sometimes it's been a very long, sometimes a very short, very sad story. I find myself not knowing what to say or how to say it. And if you could give any encouragement to somebody, everyone listening is following a Caring Bridge page right now. Like, what is the best thing they can do?
So I would say knowing that people are reading it means a lot. Rachel, like, Rachel liked it. Like when she got to 1,000, 1,000 times somebody had read her site, like she thought that was very cool. So reading it, if you don't have time to do more than click an emoji, great. But I'd say those words of encouragement, they really matter. Or the comments, it's nice when people say you're doing great, or, you know, whatever they know resonates for you. But sharing something back, boy, that meant a lot. Like when we went to Hearst Castle and people shared back, "Oh, I knew you'd love it, Rachel. This was my favorite thing. Did you see that?" Or they would sometimes send their own funny story about something that they'd done. So I would just say those personal comments back meant a lot. And here's another thing, if you're close to the caregiver and they post something that where they're going through a lot, maybe you don't write them back on the CaringBridge page. Maybe you text them offline and you say, "Wow, I read your post today and it really touched me and I'm here for you if you need me." And I got a lot of those, and I can't tell you how much it meant to me when somebody would say, "I saw your post today. Sounds like this is a really hard week. What can I do?"
Yeah, that's great advice. So it's been almost 8 years, you said.
Yeah.
What do you guys do to keep the memory alive?
Well, it's been actually an interesting week for that because I'm here right now in her house, and one of my other sisters is coming up this afternoon. My sister and my husband and I bought houses next door to each other, thinking that we would retire in them. And now my siblings mostly own the house I'm sitting in right now. A lot of times we just gather. Yesterday was her birthday, and we all texted around pictures of her for her birthday. We know we were lucky. We had time with her and we had a ton of support. We had really great medical care. I wish she had not had to suffer the way she did. Absolutely. Do I feel like there was anything left undone? No. And I know I'm really fortunate in that I don't think there are things we could have done for her that we didn't get a chance to do. What would I want you to remember about Rachel? I would want you to remember that the things she loved deeply and completely and passionately, and that her spirit is still with me and other people who loved her every day.
How long was the whole journey for you guys and her?
It was about 2.5 years, which was actually pretty miraculous given how advanced her cancer was when it was diagnosed. And I really do feel that the support she got, I mean, her determination made a huge difference, the quality of her medical care, but the support she got made a huge difference too. Made a big difference to her. It made a big difference to, I think, everyone in the family. And I have just seen that time and time again. And, sometimes the healthcare journey has a very, very happy ending. And the support makes a difference in those. And sometimes it has a really hard ending and it's helpful there as well.
Well, it sounds like the mission rang true. She did not go through her health journey alone, and you were surrounded as well. But you played as big a role in that as maybe the page did for her. So that's really amazing that you did that for her. It's really something.
Well, it was, I look back on it and I'm not 100% sure how I did it or how my other siblings, towards the end of her life, my brother really became the primary person, just because of his clinical skills. But for the first 2 years, it was mostly me. And also I was right there. And people do what they need to do. And I think you see that so much. Now I have the privilege of being on the CaringBridge board and being very involved in CaringBridge and seeing the range of diagnoses and healthcare journeys that we support. And I am always amazed how people just step up under such difficult circumstances. And, I was fortunate. I have other siblings. I have these wonderful young adult children. My nieces and nephews were all part of this. So there was a big family of support, and it was still really tough. I think I would just encourage people, whether they have, like I did, a whole tribe there to support them, or whether they think, well, it's just me. I think you'll find a lot of additional support if you ask. And I never occurred to me when I was starting the CaringBridge page that it would help me. It was all about helping Rachel.
But it helped you a lot.
It helped me so much. On days when I couldn't figure out what to do, it was something I could do for her. But also it helped me really feel connected. It helped me feel less isolated as well, because being a caregiver, particularly for somebody who's a very private person, can be very, very isolating. So no, it was, it's the reason why when I literally at a conference, I was a speaker at a conference, and the then CEO of CaringBridge was also at the conference, and she introduced herself to me, and I said, I love your organization. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, I want to help.
Wow, not just one, but two separate CaringBridge pages, one for family and friends, one for Rachel's work colleagues, to honor a woman who worked in the courtroom almost until the end of her life and wanted to keep those worlds carefully separated. As always, a reminder, if you or someone you know wants to share your story of hope, resilience, or caregiving here on the podcast, send us an email or reach out via the contacts listed on the main page, because we'd love to talk to you next. We'll see you next time.